Chapter 91. Jairus' resignation. The Lord at the synagogue. After these my words, all take to their rest. Only my brethren, Mother Mary and Boris, are still busy in the kitchen in order to prepare everything necessary for the approaching Sabbath. Sarah and Lydia, too, are assisting Mary, happily romping about in the kitchen. After having everything under control, they too take to their rest. And the first on her legs, as usual, in the morning, is Mary, waking up those she needs long before dawn, so as to have everything in order and ready before the Sabbath starts, according to Jewish custom. Boris too is busy, and so the tables are set when we are all getting up from our quarters. Outside, psalms are being sung, and upon the many tables in the open, well-prepared fish, bread and wine are waiting for their consumers. Thereupon we move over to the morning meal, even as I dispatch the messenger to Jerusalem upon the matter in question. Jairus anxiously awaits the messenger's return, who of course remain absent for only the human time it takes him to negotiate with the clerics. Since it took close on 2 hours to deal with the clerics, the messenger also came back only after 2 hours, to Jairus' immense joy, bringing Jairus, besides the happy acceptance of his resignation notice, also an official letter of praise and thanks for his faithfully conducted ministry, advising him also the name of his successor and asking him to, if necessary, assist same with advice and deed. Jairus now is fully cheered, saying to me, "Lord, I thank you from the depth of my heart for this wonderful rescue from an office which along such ungodly engagement conditions was bound to obviously make me a Satan's booty." Say I, "Now then, did I not say unto you, when it concerns brilliant clerics' deals, then the Sabbath can be profaned in the midst of the offering at any time of day?" From this you can see how much the clerics think of God and His holy commandments. But now we shall nevertheless visit the synagogue on account of the people, and see all that the Pharisees shall be doing and teaching. But we shall take our place at the back, so as not to be noticed by the puffed-up Pharisees and elders straight away. Says Jairus, "But I shall not go in, as every boy would know me. Were I inside the synagogue, then I would have to be seated at the front in the chief's presbytery, and you should be betrayed therewith." Say I, "Don't grow grey hair over it, for when I suggest what is to happen, then you can act accordingly without misgivings, and not one of your hairs shall be bent. And so let us get under way, one and all." Thereon we move, shortly reaching the synagogue. Entering same, it proves to be quite empty, with the presbytery occupied only by the serving Pharisees. Gradually a few old Jews arrive, taking their place in their pews in order to take their morning nap with gusto. After completion of offerings and dull rattling off of the commandments, suitable psalms and Solomon's song, a speaker mounts the pulpit, starting to preach the following with a hoarse voice. "My beloved, in the name of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, we now are living in stressful times, nearly akin to when Noah was building the ark, and finally locking himself in with his family upon Jehovah's commandment. We are now standing at the holy place of which Daniel prophesied, seeing his prophesied abominations. How the spellbound pagan slaves had to painfully watch and wait for their turn to be laid in molten iron by the pagan witch Megara, even whilst watching the tormenting of their brethren, without our being able to turn left or right. We stand abandoned like a long-dead tree trunk on a mountain top as gaping testimony that luscious woods might have flourished even at such altitude. What can be done? That's the big question. A crown of diamonds to him who can find a pertinent answer thereto. But let him well keep in mind our spellbound and bonded condition with the entire world's chains. On the one hand, the Romans breathe down our necks like the entire Sinai mountain. On the other, the carpenter's son, who as if suddenly dropped out of the clouds, has risen into a prophet, from the merest domestic fool, the like of whom there has not lived among us since Abraham. All run after him, great or small, young or old. If Jehovah himself came down to earth today, it is highly questionable whether he could accomplish greater deeds. Every sickness he heals by mere word from afar. The dead he calls forth from the grave, giving them back a completely healthy life. Likewise, he commands the winds and the waves of the sea, and they obey him like slaves their master. When he speaks, then deepest godly wisdom shines forth with all, and all are gripped by the power of his word. Follow him from one city to another. Besides that, he has the great of Rome on his side, who would stand by him with their legions if he were in need of them. We, however, stand at the edge of the most dreadful abyss, to be swallowed up at any moment, whilst having not one mortal being on our side, other than these old dozers in the synagogue. Here I ask again, what are we to do? Of what use now Moses and all the prophets? And what even Jehovah who spoke with Moses and the prophets? And who has now left us stuck in the deepest mire for more than a century? And whether we scream loud enough to be heard in the stars, no Jehovah answers any more, leaving us in a more shameful fix than a poor, tenfold seduced and languishing bride by her perfectly cream-puffed bridegroom. On top of that, we carry the honorary title, the people of God, even whilst the supposedly godless heathens stand in highest prestige and possession of all the earth's power and wealth, the way Jehovah, according to Scripture, promised it to his David, but which has never been fulfilled. Here it says, speaking in grandiose godly fashion, "And to your kingdom there shall henceforth be no end." Behold David's everlasting kingdom now. Oh, you beautiful lie of a David-flattering prophet! How often there has been an end to David's kingdom already. He had himself already had such pleasure at the hands of his son. And had an oak tree not captured his son, then David could have sung his sweet Jehovah another 10,000 psalms, and Absalom would still have sat upon the throne. But let's leave the past and look at the contemporary, promised everlasting kingdom of David. Oh, you beautiful kingdom! Perhaps David's soul migrated to the Caesars of Rome, whose kingdom, at least for the present, has an appearance of by far greater everlasting endurance than the snail's kingdom of the man in accordance with God's heart. Brethren, have you not worked it out yet, that our entire age-old doctrine is a fairy tale, pure and simple, having nothing to it but fabricated names of yore? and we are still the dupes sticking to it, as if some real salvation could be won therefrom. What donkey or ox would tolerate a completely tattered old coat on his body if he could get 10 new ones of the best material for it? History and our very own experience shows us with solar brilliance that there is no more to the entire Mosaic doctrine and all the prophets than a hollow, deaf nut, and yet we cling to it, quite starved as to some absolute calculation, and out of sheer deep-seated ancient stupidity, and not to be moved from the spot, even when the water is already running into all our bodily orifices, like the Jordan into the Dead Sea. Hence, brethren, arise, and let us too join up with the carpenter's son, and we are safe. Because he is doing before our eyes that which the elders did not fabricate about Jehovah, whom they saw no more than we have done. I consider that with this talk I have answered the most ponderous question which I myself raised. Act accordingly, and we shall at once fare better, physically and morally. Reuben, our elder, preceded us with a good example. Let's follow him, and we shall not go amiss. Maybe it is precisely this previously sparsely regarded carpenter Jesus is the right one to at least partly restore the truly unhappy, supposedly everlasting kingdom of David. Because with his really incomprehensible magical power, which no worldly power can match, it is most probable to inspire such respect in the superstitious Romans that their mighty legions could shortly grow 1,000 legs for retreat. Here the elders, scribes, Pharisees, and Levites rise, saying, "You cannot understand Scripture properly if you can speak in such heretical fashion, which in a worldly sense indeed could have some substance, but in a spiritual sense blackens God's indisputable majesty, on account of which we are forced to expel you from our company to the heathens." Says the speaker, "Do you actually think to punish me therewith? Oh, there you err mightily. If you intend to remain fools and starve to death, then by all means do so that you remain in your ancient night and darkness. You old numbskulls, give me an example where a preacher of God called forth the dead from the grave back to life, the way this our carpenter had done." Say the elders, "This God himself shall do on Judgment Day." Says the speaker, "On Judgment Day your God will pipe something to you for sure." No man knows anything about Jehovah, as we know him from Scripture, has ever called any man back from death to life. Since no man ever experienced such, having nothing certain but eternal death before him at the end of his short earthly life, has become extremely sad, and he began in his despair to ask, "What am I, and whither do I go when this life ceases?" And since there never was any lack of such servants of God as we have the honour to be, these had to invent something for the comfort of the inquirers and their own best interests, so that the acutely inquiring one obtained some comfort. And from this emerged the awakening on Judgment Day, which the wide heavens are not likely to ever let arise. Yet we, pensive fools, even allow ourselves to be talked around therewith, but are none the less blind to the unheard of actual deeds and happenings that are being accomplished right in front of our eyes, noses, and ears. Is it in all earnest something lofty for an old man to be incapable of separating himself from the completely mouldy dummy? What are you going to do with the old trash of the Jews, which, with the enlightenment of the nations, will hardly maintain itself for another half-century? I, for one, am not going to be the fool to wait for the demise of this blind doctrine, to which there is no more than void historical names, or names and fairy tales that some wet nurses may have told their infants ad lib, out of which grown-up infants may later have glued together a fabulous God doctrine, within which no system or spark of any logical order in the Greek sense can be detected. Should Jehovah perhaps not be capable of speaking and teaching logically, like some wretched Greek philosopher? Then he may need to attend a Greek school before teaching truth, order, and wisdom to his not altogether foolish peoples. Be it eternally far from me to not imagine Jehovah wiser than a prophet who was brought up by his nanny, and in addition to his customary stupidity, possesses just enough natural wit to bring forth such shady doctrine as to not understand it himself or be capable of doing so, which actually is part of his plan, so that such doctrine would be understood even less by any other man. Leave me alone with your Jehovah. Verily, as an honest man, I have to begin to be properly ashamed for ever having embraced such inhumanly stupid doctrine. If, however, there ever was something to Moses' doctrine in the beginning, then this something now is so distorted through lowest human dirty tricks that we possess no more of it than perhaps even its mispronounced name. Therefore, I am even from today a disciple of the carpenter Jesus. He is good, and unlike you, shall not cast out an honest fellow